If I were to tell you that the president of Turkey had a son and that the son's 3-year-old investment firm was making, say, 200% in annual returns, would your first thought be, oh, wow, he must be a financial wizard? Or would it be, that sounds like that's probably a pretty corrupt situation? I know where I'd land. What if it were Vladimir Putin's son or Mohammed bin Salman's or, you know where I'm going, President Donald Trump's son? Because, yes, that is what is actually happening right here in front of all our eyes, out in the open. The eldest son of our own president, investment genius Don Trump Jr. Here it is in the New York Times. Donald Trump Jr.'s investment firm posts staggering returns of 200%. Quote, just 2 years ago, 1789 Capital, the investment fund Trump runs with business partner Omid Malik, managed a few $100 million. It now oversees more than $3 billion. Its main investment fund generated returns of roughly 200% as of June 30th, according to a person familiar with the firm's performance. While still early in its investment cycle, those returns eclipse the average returns of about 21% for venture capital firms started in 2023, according to PitchBook. Now, we should note, Donald Trump Jr. and his partner at 1789 are not accused of doing anything illegal. But wow, he really got very, very good at this very quickly. In interviews with the New York Times, executives of 1789's portfolio company said they viewed involvement in 1789 as a way to get close to the Trump orbit. And this is just the latest in a daily, I mean, sometimes multiple times a day, drumbeat of headlines about what is unquestionably the most corrupt American administration of my lifetime and possibly ever. Congressman Jamie Raskin is a Democrat of Maryland, and he joins me now. I think every time I read one of these stories, I have that, like, there ought to be a law cliche reaction, because I don't think there's anything illegal here. The president's son can create what seems transparently corrupt transactional fund that people put money into as means of purchasing access to the most powerful person in the world. But man, does it not feel right.
Well, it's definitely a hallmark of authoritarian regimes all over the world. As you were saying, if you go to Saudi Arabia or Turkey or Egypt, you would expect the sons of the president to have clairvoyant investing knowledge yes. and understanding of, you know, the full panorama around them. But I wouldn't conclude so quickly that there are no laws being violated. For one thing, the companies that are being invested in by 1789, which is his investment firm, are getting a radically disproportionate share of no-bid government contracts. And there are laws and rules that govern when no-bid contracts can be passed out. There's also the fact that the government itself cannot be used for the purposes of running a private business. The White House cannot be used like that. The Department of Defense cannot be used like that. So here you're talking about an investment firm that was worth less than $1 billion, and then in the course of the first year and a half of the administration now has more than $3.5 billion in assets. It's posting these staggering returns of 200%, 10 times what other private venture firms are averaging in the same time period. So, yeah, either he's an investment genius or he's the luckiest guy on the planet.
Yeah, and your point is well taken. I mean, we all of the stuff that we're getting, we should note, all of these headlines about corruption, and tip of the cap to the reporters that have ferreted this all out. The New York Times, in particular, has been doing incredible work on this beat. It's not coming from, it's certainly not coming from DOJ investigations or the SEC or the CFTC. It's not coming from congressional oversight because Republicans are in control of Congress and basically wield subpoena power. So we are just seeing kind of do you get the sense we're just seeing the top of the iceberg in that sense? We don't have any special access or knowledge to how this is all actually working behind the scenes.
Right. Well, a vastly disproportionate share of the businesses that 1789 is investing their clients' assets in are government related. So they do seem to have an uncanny ability to predict what government is going to do in terms of government contracts. There are private companies they're investing in, but a lot of those are subject to government regulation, and therefore their, the rise in their value or decline in their value is very much tied to what the government does. It's interesting that 1789 and Donald Trump Jr. has invested the money of their clients in Juul, which was stymied by not being able to do e-cigarettes. Lots of controversy about it. And then the government regulators say they can do e-cigarettes. And just recently, the FDA, in addition to approving them generally, has put out a rule for consideration to allow them to do flavored e-cigarettes, which have been, very much disfavored by the health community, by doctors, medical associations, because they're getting kids hooked on cherry flavor and menthol flavored and different kind of sweet flavored e-cigarettes. But apparently 1789 is a company to follow because, they either have amazing precognitive skills or they have some inside track on what's going to happen.
I mean, here's another example. The company Grab-A-Gun, which is one of the companies in their portfolio, went public last year, merged with a 1789 company. Now, the idea here is direct-to-consumer mailed gun purchases and sales, which, again, call me a bleeding heart lib. Doesn't sound like a great idea to me. But that, of course, would rely on federal regulations to be loosened. And sure enough, Donald Trump has signed an executive order that would loosen the regulations on precisely or promulgate a regulation that would loosen the regulations precisely on the thing that is the kind of dispositive regulatory question for their whole business model.
That's right. And the same thing happened with Polymarket as well, because originally there'd been a ban on taking wagers from U.S. residents. And then what do you know, under the Trump administration, they turn around on that. And 1789 had been a big investor in that. And the value of that company has just absolutely skyrocketed with that favorable government treatment.
I guess the question here is, like, what are the steps, right? Obviously, there's no oversight that's going to happen now. But and we don't know if laws have been broken. There is a kind of incredible brazenness to this whole thing. It's flagrant. What do you see as your role if Democrats win back a majority in Congress? And I mean, you can say oversight or subpoenas, but like, there is a lot to dig into here.
Yes, you got it, Chris. Well, look, first of all, we're not sitting on our hands now. When we learn of these things, we do everything in our power to get all the information we can. And when we go out on TV or we go out in the public and newspaper articles are published, we then hear from whistleblowers, people on the inside who understand exactly how various rip-offs and schemes like this are taking place. So we're gathering the information we can, even though we don't control the gavels now. But if and when we win and we, begin to restore the rule of law, we will get to the bottom of exposing all of this corruption, and we will not be afraid to follow the path of accountability for anybody who has violated any existing laws or regulations. And if they're simply violating the norms of the country and things that people would have thought completely outrageous before, then we're going to have to move, and we probably will have to move to legislate to prevent this kind of raw and rampant corruption and prostitution of our government.
Very quickly here, you're working on a discharge petition for a bill that would ban the proposed slush fund, which I don't think is dead in any way. We're looking to set a record for successful discharge petitions, I think, in this Congress. Do you think you have a shot at actually getting the 218 you need?
Yes, well, we got all 212 Democrats on over the last couple of weeks. So now we are looking for 6 good Republicans, and lots of Republicans across the political spectrum in the country have been denouncing this outrageous $1.8 billion ripoff of the taxpayers, which a federal judge in Florida has described as essentially a fraud on the court and therefore a fraud on the country. While the Attorney General designate or nominee has said it's not moving forward, well, we know it will move forward as soon as Donald Trump thinks that thinks that it's safe. And in any event, they're using other channels to get their money out the door to the people they want to get it to, like Michael Flynn, like Carter Page. We do not want them using the judgment fund of the United States of America, which is for jury verdicts against the country and real valid causes of action, to pay off the foot soldiers and their private militia.